Hello and welcome back. I wish to record another message that has kind of the similar topic to my previous recording. If you have seen it, if not, doesn't really matter. What I wanted to say was that it is okay for us to kind of go back to certain things. And what I mean by that, because please understand it correctly, when it comes to our healing is not as straightforward as we humans, from our human perspective, perhaps would like to. We would like to kind of for things to come up and for us to go through these things and then for these things to kind of never come back again, right? But it doesn't work like that, because each time that you have, let's say, learned a lesson or passed a test, I was going to say, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a test, but each time that you have actually closed out a certain cycle, that cycle is going to come back at some point again in the future for you, even though time doesn't exist, but bear with me. It is not to really test you in a way that kind of what testing means to us humans, because we associate testing with like, oh, if I pass, there's gonna be a reward, and if I don't pass, there will be punishment. It's not about that. It's more of basically a feedback tool for you to see where you're at in your healing, and if there's perhaps even more to learn from a certain situation. And this is something that when these things come back, so when something comes back, a lesson, right, something that we are meant to heal, to release, if you have been on a spiritual path for a while, then you have probably been through, let's say, I apologize. Let's say the same lessons over and over again, just kind of in different situations or different ways, but they're meant to kind of trigger the same things within you, and for you to learn and or heal or release certain things within you, right? So basically, when these things come back, which you have been experiencing and are experiencing and probably will continue experiencing to a certain level, of course, it is extremely important for us to remember that the things that are circling back into our 3D reality or our energetic bodies, doesn't really matter. So things that come back, they are not a sign of you failing on your journey, or you, let's say, I don't know, forgetting what you have learned in the past. It is not you sliding back onto lower frequency, basically. These things circle back to show you that there is yet another way of looking at that thing, whatever that is, right? The situation, pattern, karmic cycle, right? Or a person or a situation, doesn't really matter. Or something within yourself. It is, you are meant to, and you also understand this, of course, that you're meant to kind of try to look at it from even higher perspective than you have been looking at it from the last time that same thing came up. So let's say there is, I don't know, let's say you have a negative pattern of overeating when you are emotionally overwhelmed. Let's just say that this is the thing. And the last time that happened, you were at a different level, a different frequency, and you thought that you have closed that cycle, you have learned, but then here you are a certain amount of time later, many other lessons later on, you have raised your frequency to a much higher level, but the pattern comes back. And here you are again, for whatever reason, right? You find yourself repeating that same pattern, as in you're overeating again, right? It's your coping mechanism or distraction, doesn't matter. And you may be thinking to yourself like, wait, hold on. Haven't I already moved past that? Haven't I already healed that within myself? Isn't it enough that I have been, let's say, healing that part of myself that causes me to repeat that negative pattern within myself? Oh, I've been through the same situation, or let's say different situations that causes me to react this way already 30 times. Why does it have to happen again, right? And this message is, in a way, part 2 to the previous video, although you don't really have to watch the previous upload. Of course, you're very welcome to. I just kind of felt that I wanted to add something without having to record again the whole thing. So I'm just going to do 2 separate videos. And you having to, let's say, re-experience a certain lesson, whatever that is. So find yourself again in a situation where something is happening and you're thinking like, wait, I have done this before. I thought I have healed that. It hasn't come up for me for quite a bit of time. And so I thought that I am already above it, but here I am again. That is, of course, and those are the things that you already know, but you perhaps need a reminder, you need to hear it again, that things are coming up for you again, not to bring you down, not to show you that you have kind of fallen back down to a lower frequency. You have not gone back on your healing. You're not failing. You haven't failed. It is, of course, because now that you have risen to such a high level of frequency, now you are to look at the same thing yet again and kind of build on the knowledge and wisdom that you have already of that situation, because there is more wisdom to gain from that. And as infuriating as that can be at times, because maybe whatever is coming up yet again for you, you have been through it so many times and you're basically just sick and tired of things repeating themselves. I know that I personally have been there myself with different things where I'm like, really, is this happening yet again? And sometimes it's not really that easy to kind of find what we're meant to find, because yes, you are on that higher frequency and you are very much aware of the wisdom that you have remembered because you went through these things right in the past. Now that you're higher, you're aware of different things, but maybe the answers aren't as obvious. And of course, there's a reason for it. You maybe need to try to look at it through a different perspective. Well, I mean, you're meant to, but you kind of have to do a little bit of both mental and emotional gymnastic to try to find that clarity that your soul needs you to have in order for you to move forward. And here I want to say, because my guides are kind of wanting me to remind you that just because I am saying these things now, that does not mean that all of the lessons that you had to learn are going to continue coming back for the rest of your existence. It is not like this. Once you have learned everything that there is to learn about, let's say, a certain pattern, right? A certain karmic cycle, negative belief system, right? Or a coping mechanism, you will not have to go back because you have risen so high in your own frequency that there's just like, let's say, no more for you to learn from that pattern. So no, you will not be like, let's say, repeating the same lessons over and over again as you advance and as you raise your vibration. But until that point arrives on your journey where you have learned everything that there is to learn from, let's say, a certain pattern, right? Then you will have to experience these things. And I was going to say that it kind of feels discouraging. 11:11 on the timer. Thank you, God. But it's not going to be as difficult. So if you were to kind of look at just one thing that you had to heal within yourself and looked back at yourself, at your journey from the beginning, from the moment you have been activated, and only looking at that one thing within you, that one pattern or wound, you have been healing that wound in different ways, in different layers for a long time, right? But as the time progressed, even though time doesn't exist, I'm saying this yet again, but just to kind of make it easier for me to explain, like, the lessons aren't as heavy as they have been before. And so each time the thing comes back, the pattern, a negative belief within you, right, a coping mechanism, whatever it is, it doesn't hit as hard. And so that is going to continue. So even though, yes, things will repeat themselves for a period of time until you have learned everything, the lessons aren't going to be as heavy and as difficult to go through. And this is really important. My guides are telling me to repeat that. What is important is for us to don't forget to not ever forget that just because certain things are showing up for us yet again, that does not mean that we have failed or that we have gone back on our healing in any way. It is impossible. Even, to tell you that when you raise to even higher frequency, right? You go from whatever frequency to next level frequency, you cannot fall back. Yes, you will be kind of dipping down until you stabilize your frequency, which just means that, yes, there will be certain lessons kind of circling back. So certain things will continue repeating themselves until you have, let's say, learned everything you could be learning. And then that thing is not going to be dragging you down on the frequency scale, if you will, right? So you're at any point in time stabilizing your frequency and raising higher and higher. But you can never go back. So basically, yes, you can go, think about, let's say, 10 steps, right? On a staircase. When you reach a level 5, let's say, you will dip down to level 4, or like the step number 4, and then back to the 5. Yes, you may even dip down to level 3, but then you will completely close out cycles on that step number 3, and then you will only kind of be bouncing back and forth between the step number 5 and 4, right? So your frequency on that level. And then once you have closed out most of the cycles on the level 4, you will be more stable on the step number 5, and you will start rising to the step number 6. But because once you have stabilized enough your frequency on that step number 5, you cannot go back to step number 1 or 2 or 3, because you have already learned everything that there was to be learned on these levels. So the same way it is with the patterns, the wounds, the things that come up yet again for us. And this is important for me to say, because this collective needs to hear it yet again, and so I'm saying this yet again. Really do not give yourself any hard time because you have noticed that, in all the stress or whatever is happening, I managed to kind of repeat the same pattern, and I am very much conscious of it. I know that I am more determined because of that next time if something like this would happen, I am not going to react this way. And that is just you learning. But remember to give yourself grace. Even if you, let's say, a certain pattern comes up for you again and you cannot rise above it right away completely, where you're like, what? Why is this showing up? I'm so above this. Truly, when you're honest with yourself, you should congratulate yourself even if you're failing at something. And I'm saying this to kind of just make you understand, and not because you're actually failing. None of us are failing. If we are, let's say, dipping back down to a lower frequency level, it is because there is still something for us to learn from that level. Not necessarily because we have failed and we have to go back because we're being punished because we couldn't close out the cycle. Yes, and it can be quite infuriating at times if you have been on this journey for long enough time, I would say. Of course, it's relative. Maybe you're just sick and tired of kind of the same thing repeating, and yes, it's very tiring to kind of go through the same things over and over again, and they kind of seemingly never end, right? The pain never ends, the situations never end, the patterns never end. They do, of course, but even if the moment it kind of feels to you that, it's happening again, I really dislike it, it is because you see it this way. It is because obviously something within you still needs releasing. Sorry, confirmation burp. So, congratulate yourself and applaud yourself and support yourself through the journey, even if you notice that, oh darn, I actually have repeated the cycle, even though I should know better by now. I did it. Well, clearly I still have learning to do. I still have healing to do. There's still a different layer to this healing, and there's still a different way for me to look at it that I am yet to see. And give yourself grace. So this is what I wanted to share. If you want to work with me, if you feel guided to, down in the description box, you can find my contact information. If not, I will talk to you another time. Bye.